Good afternoon. This is Peter Thomas, the General Counsel for the NAAOP, National Association for the Advancement of Orthotics and Prosthetics. It's the beginning of March, and there's a lot happening in Washington, as you can imagine. There are some very interesting things that have been developments under the Affordable Care Act in terms of prosthetic and orthotic healthcare coverage. First off, there was a December proposed regulation that NAAOP and the rest of the O&P Alliance organizations commented on that essentially helped further define essential health benefits. This is an issue that really has been punted to the states and to insurance plans to decide exactly what they cover in the essential health benefits package. But the regulation promised to try to do some things with respect to the category of mandated benefits under the Affordable Care Act known as rehabilitative and habilitative services and devices. That's one of the 10 categories of benefits that's required to be covered by ACA health plans. And yet there's very little definition around what that actually means. For instance, does that include orthotic and prosthetic care? It's not completely clear. Obviously, orthotic and prosthetic care is considered a typical employer benefit covered under employer plans, and that's an important standard that is represented in the Affordable Care Act. But different states have treated this in different ways. The regulation just came out a few days ago, and I'm happy to say that CMS has mandated, CMS being the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they've mandated that the definition of both habilitation and rehabilitation services include the word devices. So that's a real step forward. That's not an express affirmation that prosthetic and orthotic care is covered under every essential health benefits plan across the country, but it does mean, and it does clarify, that statutory provision of essential health benefits was intended to cover devices, and when you talk about rehabilitation and habilitation, it's typical that orthotic and prosthetic care would be covered under that benefit. So that's another way that we can argue in the states that O&P care is covered. And that's important because we're seeing some real limitations in some states that we're working with now. NAAOP has taken the lead in trying to organize both federal and state-based constituency groups in New York State to try to eliminate the New York State's benchmark limitation that states that coverage of prosthetic devices will be one prosthesis per limb per lifetime. It's an unbelievable limitation, and one that, in our view, violates the Affordable Care Act. And we're fighting it, and we're organizing both New York State advocates as well as patient and professional societies and groups. We're also linking with federal organizations to try to make sure that we put pressure on the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level to not approve an essential health benefits plan in New York that contains this provision for the next benefit year, 2016. We're orchestrating that campaign. We're also participating in a campaign in California, working with Jeff from Cascade and working with the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund to try to do what we can to make sure that the Kaiser benchmark plan, which was the selected small group plan in the state of California, actually does cover prosthetic and orthotic care. If you read the coverage policy in California, it's very confusing. It states in one section that O&P care is not covered, and in another section it states that it is. So the question is, how can we clarify coverage of orthotic and prosthetic care in the state of California? And if you have trouble getting coverage in your state, you should contact NAAOP. The other thing that's going to be happening later this week is the hearing of the King versus Burwell case in the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's the case that challenges federal subsidies from flowing through the federal exchange, which applies to 35 states, in order to provide individuals with additional subsidies to purchase and afford health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act. If the case goes against the government, ultimately there will be a stake through the heart of the Affordable Care Act. We won't really know what the answer to the case or what the holding in the case will be until June, but the case is being argued early in March. We'll be watching that closely and we'll report to you as developments occur. Having said that, the most important thing you can do in March is to come to Washington in the third week in March, the week of the 23rd, and attend the AOPA Policy Forum. NAAOP is proud to, again, this year be promoting the Policy Forum, to encourage our members to attend the Policy Forum, and to put the best foot forward of the field and the profession before Congress and the administrative agencies. We strongly encourage you to attend and to even bring a patient and have them put into words the best possible story that NAAOP can portray on a whole wide variety of policy issues. Thanks so much, and we'll talk with you next month.